Oh, shit.
This guy on his own in like 2 months built this complete product, raised $500,000 and launched the biggest competitor. They have raised $50 million and they haven't even launched the product yet.
If we look at kind of concepts, we try to put the work of others in the foreground.
Hard question.
I know.
That's a very hard question.
0.23%. This is how many people in the world know how to code. Every app you've ever used, every website you've ever visited, every video game you've ever played, every device you've ever unboxed, the entire financial system and Minesweeper were all built by this 0.23% of the population. Inside here are 7 of the 10 richest people in the world. And these people were the only ones with the privilege to do something that no one else could. Build new ideas using technology. But what if this privilege wasn't locked behind this 0.23% of the population? What if everyone gets it? Well, now it's finally happening.
So today we're talking about vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
You can now vibe code any app in a matter of minutes.
Write what you want and see it get built immediately. So what does the world look like if now everyone can suddenly build whatever they want? But also, what happens to developers now? Because not everyone's happy about it.
The disease called the vibe coding mind virus.
Well, to learn more about it, I packed my bags and I flew to Stockholm to the HQ of Lovable. They went from 0 to $10 million in revenue in just 60 days. And they did that by allowing people to build products without knowing how to code. And so we're gonna go behind the scenes. I talked to the designers, the engineers, I stole their food, and I'm taking you with me to get a glimpse of what this new world will look like. A world where finally everyone can build. There I met Amir. He showed me around the place. We got coffee with performance-enhancing mushrooms.
Feel like you have, it's like God mode. You will just be mega
try it
focused.
then.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna talk about it later. And he gave me a tour of the office.
It's not a typical like open office startup like chaos thing.
No.
Is it on purpose?
So, yeah, you can guess what's happening here.
Well, we can see if you should learn that or not.
No, so these 2 rooms are new because we were growing and we didn't have enough space, product and growth. This is Leon, right?
Lucas.
Lucas, sorry.
Enrico, nice to meet you.
Yeah, we're growing so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a new room as well. We got this yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And that's
So you're like slowly taking over everything.
Yeah, we want to get our own. I went to look at that last 2 days ago, like a whole building.
Okay, but let's start from the basics. This is assembly code. It's how we used to program computers back in the day. It's how Pokemon Ruby or the software for the space shuttle were coded. And this complex-looking piece of code simply sums 2 numbers together. But as technology progressed, the way we speak to computers got simpler and simpler. Now, it still requires you knowing how to code, but this is how you do the same operation in Python. It's way easier to understand. But now we've just crossed a new step where we don't need the code altogether. I can just say, build me a calculator app that is a 2D video game in the style of Pokemon Emerald. The character moves around on the map and collects the numbers and operations that get added into the calculator. And boom, there we go. And the implications of this are huge. Building apps and games and even tech companies was reserved for a few, this 0.23%. But the first thing I wanted to understand is, what are people building with this today, right now?
It got sent me a video on TikTok. It's not a Spotify clone, but it's like...
Oh, I saw this, right? Which is basically like an iPad app where it looks like a fun little vinyl player or whatever. And you can play your music, your Spotify music. And then people in the comments were like, oh, you need to pay for a subscription to use it. So I made this.
She made it in
Lovable.
Lovable.
The best thing about this is that it's free, right? Like I made this myself, so I can run this whenever I want, right? It's just running locally.
Super cool.
Yeah.
What is it?
So,
Oh, shit. That's cool.
so it's somehow tracking his hands with AI, and then he
With
can.
the camera.
Yeah. I haven't seen this before actually.
That's so cool. Like you wake up and every day you see new cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's the best job ever.
And are creating a bunch of 3D video games.
Perfect.
Alex from the team built. It's like a Doom clone
Shit.
in 3D with Lovable.
Oh, you can see the assets there he
Yeah.
uploaded. That's so cool.
And
Now, these are examples of games and little fun projects, but I was really surprised to see how people are already using Lovable and vibe coding tools to build actual tech products and tech companies.
So this started in Lovable,
yes, exactly.
and then he raised $500,000.
From start to finish, I think it was a couple months maybe he built this.
Wow.
and then raised $500,000. It's an app that lets you search for clothes.
Try kimono with Vim style.
And he calls it perplexity for shopping.
Oh shit, this is actually good.
So, yeah, choose the clothing that you want to try, and then it generates an AI image of yourself with that clothing. The biggest competitor started working on this a couple years ago, and they have raised like $50 million, and they haven't even launched their product yet.
And this guy on his own in a few months?
Yeah, exactly. This guy on his own in like 2 months built this complete product, raised $500,000 and launched the product, and I assume he now has a bunch of users as well.
There is basically thinking about the entire journey. So not just building a product and putting it out there, but also things like distribution. So how do you distribute and market what you've built?
Yeah.
And then kind of making sure that you can keep track, you can look into analytics. It's like, I think the future is not build a website, but how do you build a business?
So let's be clear, these tools are still limited. You cannot prompt, hey, build me GTA 6 and expect to have it. But they are already at a point where people are starting to build real applications. And as it turns out, established companies are starting to use vibe coding, not for their user-facing app necessarily, but for internal tools.
I would say that consumers, they usually build things for others to use, while like companies, they build things that themselves use. Like internal software, for example, companies, instead of hiring an in-person team for $2 million a year, they can spend
I was working at Amazon,
a couple $1,000s.
and there was an internal tool that I fucking hated. And I was talking to the PM of that tool every week. It was so frustrating because it's also something that no user will ever see, so they didn't have any incentive to make it good.
But the most interesting thing here is that vibe coding finally lets us break one of the main rules of tech, the need for scale. Usually to build any piece of software, you have to spend a lot of money to build it in the first place for developers. Once you have it built, you can scale it relatively easily to millions of people. If your app costs $300,000 to build, but it solved a very specialized problem for only 3 people in the world, then these people would need to pay $100,000 for it. You see that it doesn't make sense. So now that vibe coding is starting to break this rule, interesting things are happening.
I would say it's like 60% that build something for other people, like a product or service, and like 40 for themselves. But it's actually surprising, a lot more people than I thought were building things for themselves.
Just yesterday we had some researcher tell us that he's saving like 3 hours of work every week by just having a Lovable app that does a very specific data crunching task. We've also seen like people building product.
I think in the coming years there's going to be a lot of people that use their own software that they built and they maintain. It's like custom made for themselves. Like the perfect piece of software for each individual person.
Like one-to-one.
Yes, and that to get there it takes that one person with a very strong vision and good taste for that specific niche. And that is often not the engineers that knows how to write code. It is the individual that's solving the problem for themselves and is obsessed about creating the best product. The obsession and has a lot of creativity in that specific space. There's going to be a creative explosion for people who weren't able to do this because they didn't have a team of designers, developers, like front and back and all of these things. It's just going to be that person and AI.
And the Lovable team also told me something that may seem wild now, but that actually makes a ton of sense.
I mean, I imagine a future where you need a new app or something for your job, create an app out of it, and see the
result. It takes less time to create the app than to search for the best app. That's cool. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
See, most of the apps we use, like, I don't know, Uber or Spotify, well, their value is in the actual service. And the app you use is just a way to access that service. So once people have the power to create their own, they can take that service and build the app that is specialized and tailored to their needs, instead of downloading the generic app from the App Store.
Like, let's say maybe Uber Eats gets an MCP server and you want to order food, ask for an app to order food
to
through
filter
Uber
for
Eats.
like, I don't know, allergies or something, like an allergy first ordering app.
Now, this all looked great, but I wanted to understand, who are these people doing this? I haven't seen my mom vibe coding in her spare time, so who is actually building with these tools?
80% of our users are non-technical. So we're we're building for the people that don't have the ability to build software or to program to, you know, turn their ideas into reality. So the majority don't know how to code, they're not technical.
So while the majority of the user base is non-technical, people that don't know how to code, those creating the most advanced products with Lovable right now are developers and people that already will build and make as before. But they are now just doing it at a much greater speed.
Like, let's say you want to build a product for your followers and you can use Lovable to build it fully. It does everything for you. But you still need to be able to conceptually understand what's gonna happen. All right, users come in here. Okay, we have a database here. We're gonna have to do these API calls. We're gonna have this dependency. Like, you're still gonna have to do that in your own head, right? And if you're an engineer, you're gonna be able to do that much simpler.
Because coding looks like this. The floor is very high. You need to be very skilled to build something that works. But then the ceiling is endless. You can go as complex as you want. Tools like Lovable are more like this. The floor is much, much, much lower. Prompt something and voila, it exists. But then there's a ceiling on the complexity of the things you can build. So what they are doing is trying to push both boundaries in both directions.
So both. That's the reality, because you don't want a product that can build just ultra simplistic things for non-technical people. You want these things to turn into full products.
Making sure that we fix the obvious things on the ceiling so that it's not confusing. You start using it. I think it is confusing now. You have to put in a lot of effort and then you start understanding and learning how to use the tool the best. But the main part where we're focusing is being able to build 95% of all SaaS software. Start focusing on the ceiling more. When we reach that point, or when we get closer to reaching that point, we'll gradually focus more on the ceiling.
Right now, there is definitely a hard limit to how far you can bring your Lovable app, but we're working on a lot of vertical integration with better models. I think that gap will close as well.
So building apps and products like this has its limitations, but we are moving so fast. If you think about it, even seeing something like this 2 years ago would have seemed like science fiction, yet here we are. And this is starting to change one of the golden rules of tech, what anyone would tell you when you're starting a project, which is that ideas are nothing and execution is everything.
Then the most important thing in the future is going to be distribution. If building software gets commoditized, not democratized, commoditized, or knowing what to build, right?
Exactly.
Having good taste.
Product taste. Knowing that this is something worthwhile solving, being able to talk to users about it, you still need to see and interact.
So after my first interviews, it was time for lunch. I stole some of their food and I stumbled upon a conversation that the designers were having about how to name their new feature.
Cool. Also, do you have strong opinions on Teams versus Workspaces as a name? Because I'm kind of sprinkling them together and it's a bit uncomfortable. And then that would mean that it's no longer create a workspace, it's create a team. And then you manage a team. And then you just, anything you're thinking about is a team.
See, behind every app and every product you use, there's a crazy amount of design, engineering, and psychology that makes it all work. And most people never get to see it. So now that we are here, it's time to peel back the curtain. Well, it all started with one question.
What is behind that decision of not showing people code? Because that's the way that's always been done.
One of the reasons we have hidden it more and more is that it scares some people. They think they have to understand this, but they should not understand this, right?
See, to me, this is similar to self-driving cars. Some, like Waymo, have a steering wheel and pedals, which is the old world stuff. But eventually, to bring people to the new world, you need to take away the old world and force them into this new reality. The car is going to drive itself. You don't need the pedals. You don't need the steering wheel. Now, another thing I noticed is how obsessed they are with getting users to the aha moment. The, oh shit, this works moment.
These products are not deterministic. They make a lot of errors still. For a new user to come in that is not technical, how can you give them that aha moment as quickly as possible? Imagine you come in, you don't know anything about software necessarily, and you don't have a lot of ideas, and you just do an initial prompt. How can we still give somebody, first of all, not an error?
80% of our users are non-technical people. And I think what's super important with Lovable is that whenever we introduce something, so for example, Supabase, which is like a backend.
They might not know what that is.
They wouldn't know what a backend is. They wouldn't know what Supabase is, but they also wouldn't know what a backend is. Design challenge and kind of also as an opportunity is to design something that is highly technical, but make it simple and understandable in a way that a non-technical person can work with it.
You see GitHub, and it's
what's GitHub?
Yeah, exactly.
What's GitHub?
And that's where I noticed something really interesting. When you develop an app, normally you start by developing the features, the architecture, storing the data, the functionality, and only at the end you build the visual, the UI, the actual appearance. But Lovable works in reverse. Well, this is designed on purpose.
We usually focus on the UI on the first prompt.
Okay.
Initially, you don't want to add functionality you maybe don't know that the user wants. Maybe the user doesn't want auth or connect to like some APIs. Yeah, you get to all these engineering questions. Do you want to post requests, get requests? Like, what do you actually want to do? Where do you want to store this, right? The AI would have to do gazillion assumptions based on a vague prompt.
So we have like a very opinionated stack of this is what an app should look like and be built with. And you can go outside of these boundaries, but the result is not going to be as good. And then exactly how we do that is proprietary.
Yes,
like,
the secret sauce.
Yeah.
What is the most difficult part about building something like this technically?
I mean, being able to scale to hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million users we have now, is definitely very difficult. Every day, 80,000 projects get built on our platform.
Now, Lovable, but also all the other vibe coding tools and probably 80% of AI right now comes in the form of a chatbot. And this is because ChatGPT was the one that brought AI to the mainstream. And now it's the default way we interact with AI. AI means chatbot. But a chatbot might not be where things go from here.
What I don't like about chat as an interface is basically that it's very limiting in terms of imagination.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're not a designer, if you're not a visual thinker, reading pure text, like right here, it's hard for me kind of imagine what that would look like. Where I see a lot of potential in is combining text with visual. I can basically just draw something for you. So the way it works today is that we have on the left-hand side, we have our input. And on the right-hand side, we have the output. So basically everything that's being created in here. What I find interesting is like a future where we are getting rid of the command here that is taking a lot of space. So when I ask, hey, can you help me design a website, that it then automatically suggests 2 or 3 different websites. I click on one, and I think the interaction between me as a user and the AI would be way more closer.
Now, this video is in partnership with Lovable, and they didn't only give me access to their office and their team and their Pokeballs, but they are also giving you extra credits if you want to try Lovable to give you a head start in building. You can find everything in the link in the description. But the rise of vibe coding hasn't come without its problems. Many in the developer community call it a virus. Many point out the fact that vibe-coded apps may not be as secure, or that they are very hard to scale, and some of these things are true.
Slope is more important than intercept. Like what's the curve? So I just bet on the curve. And like the trend is just going that the models are getting better. They've gotten a lot cheaper in the last 24 months. If you extrapolate on that trend, for sure, you'll be able to build like more hardcore, like full stack software with these tools.
The 0.23% of people that knows how to code is going through some big changes. Computer science graduates are struggling to find work as junior developers. Job openings are in decline. Google said that 80% of their code is now written by AI, and Mark Zuckerberg said this.
Probably in 2025, we at Meta are going to have an AI that can effectively be a sort of mid-level engineer that you have at your company.
There's a lot of worry, so I wanted to get the take of the people that are building these tools. Every single person I spoke to at Lovable was technical, so what do they think about it? Is coding really dead?
Evolution is happening, it's never gonna stop, things are gonna evolve and change. The only thing you can do is adapt. So I'm like, there's always a market for great. I think the best builders for a time will still be engineers. Either you're like very multifaceted, like you said, like you know growth, you have great taste, you understand how to build things like architectural wise, and you're a just beast at distribution. Or the other is, like you said, like very low level, hardcore engineering. You're pretty safe if you like, you want to be pick your path.
I think we're going to have AI that does all the cognitive work for all us humans, and it's going to change the world more than the Industrial Revolution changed the world. Exactly what happens is very hard to predict. Many humans already today, they can choose to live a good life depending on which country you're in without working at all. And that's going to become more the case.
So basically going to the universal basic income type of model.
But there was one last piece that I wanted to investigate and learn more about. See, you hear in the news about this company that got hundreds of millions in revenue, or the WhatsApp team that got to 1 billion users with only 19 people. These guys went from 0 to $20 million in 6 months. They had hundreds of thousands of users. The product is used and talked about to many more, and they are less than 30 people. So what are they doing differently that made this happen? Well, there was one thing I noticed from the get-go, from every single person I spoke to.
Another thing I noticed with talking to your team is that almost all of them are technical, despite many of them not doing necessarily 100% the role of an engineer, right?
It's just much easier to communicate with your teammates if everyone knows exactly how things work under the hood and how your partners, what they are doing, because as an engineer you can just understand what other tech companies are actually doing.
One big reason why we can manage so well with such a small team is that everyone here is very driven. If you have a bigger team, you have a lot of communication costs.
Yeah.
Lovable caters lunch and dinner for everybody, so people stay late and we eat together, and it's a very nice culture. So then sometimes if you wanna go harder, then staying at the office is kind of nice. So we have this joke beds at the office, beds at the office. We can't have beds at the office here. That's why we wanna.
So you wanna build your own lovable hotel. It sounds like a different thing.
It sounds like a different thing. Yeah, exactly.
And while I know this will get comments about how it's crazy that they want beds in the office or that it's weird to put mushrooms in your coffee to concentrate at work, this is an ingredient behind many of these small, hyper-successful teams because they attract people that really want to be there. But probably the most interesting thing that I noticed, and that I was thinking about as I was sitting through their weekly demo in their office, is that you hear all these success stories with billion-dollar valuations, incredibly successful people, the famous story about Steve Jobs in their garage, or you watch The Social Network. But being inside one of the most successful startups that we have today, I realized that these are just regular people, not different than you or me. They just have a mission they believe in, they work really hard, and they're just having fun. But if you want to learn how we got into this AI wave in the first place and how it all started on September 30th, 2012, well, you can watch this other video. And remember, you can use the link in the description to get access to Lovable with extra credits for free. I'm Enrico, and I'll see you in the next one.